Welcome to another episode of Driving with Slip. Rather than coming from softball, I am actually going to softball right now. But this might be a double day of episodes because there's a lot on my mind that I want to talk about. And right now, the Braves are really in the driver's seat right now to have a special season, and it's been really fun to see. As of this point, they have already won the series against the Cubs, and they can go for a sweep. And with them possibly going for the sweep, that would mean that they could possibly have a win against two of the other better teams in the NL, which means that they would have won a series against the Dodgers and they would have won a series against the Cubs. And in pretty dominant fashion, I would say, seemingly in both. Let me first talk about the Dodgers series. And I was really impressed with the Dodgers series because the Braves could have very well swept that series. And when you look at the first game of the series where the Braves were facing Sheehan, the Braves scored one run. However, they had runners on base the whole time. This was not like a total dominant one-run game in the general sense where no one was on base, plenty of strikeouts, weak contact. No, there was hard contact. There was people on base, people in scoring position a lot. And they were doing their thing. They just didn't have the timely hits. And that's okay. You can't expect them to always have the timely hits. But for them to be in a situation where they very well were maybe one hit away from, at least tying that game and sending that game into extra innings, that is absolutely excellent. And then in the second and third game, it was just completely dominant from the Braves. The Braves were able to chase Blake Snell in 4 innings. I think 4 innings. I don't want to say it was 3, but essentially before he was able to get anywhere close to a quality start, they chased him. And then they beat up on the bullpen a little bit. And they got them tired to the point where the next day, where the Braves beat up on their rookie left-hander, Dave Roberts just left him in the whole game. He did get into a groove where, he was able to go a whole bunch of innings without any hits and anybody on base. However, this was after the Braves had already scored 7 runs. And then once they, come back just a little bit, the Braves put it back on them. And that's where Matt Olson got a home run. And there was also another couple hits that scored, Mateo, I think. And that is the brand of baseball that the Braves are playing right now, where it almost seems like they can turn their offense on whenever they want. Especially when they come across the bullpens of teams. They have truly been beaten up on bullpens. And that's what good teams do. They beat up on bullpens and they win games that they're supposed to win. And right now they are winning games that people are very much wondering, thinking that these are going to be great series, where you can look at the past few series where the Braves were media was essentially talking about, oh, this is going to be a great series, where they go away from the Cleveland Guardians series and people are pretty confident that the Braves look much better than that team. They come away from the Detroit series and the Braves look a good bit better than them. They come away from the Phillies twice and got 5 out of 6 from them. They go to the Dodgers and win that series, and now they already won that series against the Cubs. And, you have to look at what is going on and just say, this Braves team is special. And they aren't even full strength. It is good to see Ha-Seong Kim back. However, Sean Murphy did get injured on a catcher's interference. It kind of was his fault, but he got a broken middle finger because rather than just the bat hitting the glove, the bat got the hand in the glove. So who knows how long Sean Murphy is going to be out. And it's just a shame. It just seems like Sean Murphy has been consistently unhealthy for a lot of, he just hasn't been healthy. He's coming from this hip injury, which he had been dealing with, the beginning of last season, or maybe it was the season before. He had the oblique injury. Yeah, it was the season before. He got the oblique injury in the first game against the Phillies. And now he's got this broken finger a couple games after he had come back. And, I'm not going to be upset that he wasn't hitting thus far. However, it looked like he was hitting okay in AAA, but when he came up to the majors, I don't think he put together one good at-bat. So that is concerning. So now Drake Baldwin is, of course, primary catcher with Sandy Leon being the backup catcher because Jonah Heim, after he was DFA'd, was traded to the Athletics. I think they're just going to ride with Sandy Leon because you don't trade for anybody because you don't know how long Sean Murphy is going to be out. And you aren't going to be sure, and if he does come back, I do think he'll be back this season, of course, because, broken fingers typically don't take too long to heal from. But what you don't want to be in a situation where you trade for somebody and then have to go through the same process of DFAing them again because you don't want to hurt the bench in any other way. And because this Braves bench is so special. So, with all of this being said, it's going to be interesting how they manage that. And people aren't really concerned that he's out. I mean, you got to look at this team where against the Cubs and the Dodgers, they were without Acuna, and they weren't slowed down at all. That is the sign of a really good team, and I'm hoping that Acuna comes back and he comes back strong and he comes back maybe working on his swing a little bit. Don't rush him back. Make sure that he's able to practice a little bit more to make sure that he feels comfortable with his swing. Because if Acuna comes back and, he goes back to the performer that we know he's capable of, this Braves team is going to be one for the ages. They've already hit 30 games, won, and there's not too many teams that have done that this early. There's not too many teams in the history of baseball that's had this much of a lead in the division, which right now they are at 9 games this early in the season. And I saw something on Twitter, so shout out to whoever said this on Twitter, is that the Phillies were 11-4 in their past 15 games. And this is right around where they fired their manager and promoted Joe Girardi as their interim manager. No, not Joe Girardi. Joe Girardi. That's the guy that was before Robertson. Oh my God, I can't remember his name. Donnie Matt. That's who they have as the interim manager. They've been 11-4 since he has been named interim manager, and they've gained like a game and a half. That's it. Maybe a game. So the fact that the Phillies have kicked it into gear a little bit and have gone on that streak, although they've been playing teams like Colorado, they played teams like the Athletics, they played teams like the Marlins, they have not played these top tier teams. And so, yeah, they're supposed to be winning those games, and even with them winning those games and the Braves facing the other two preeminent teams of the NL, Braves have continued what they've been doing. And it's I can't say it enough how special this team may be. And they're going to get Waldrop back. They're going to get Waldrop back. They're hopefully going to get Schwellenbach back. And, you know, I don't know what's going to happen with this team once that happens. But there's something else that more specifically that I want to talk about. And there's two things. The first thing is the way that Walt Weiss has been handling the bullpen and the rotation. You know, they've been mixing and matching the rotation a little bit and setting up their best pitchers against some of these teams. So, you know, people like Elder and Sale were pitching against the Dodgers. And you'll get Sale pitching today in a game where they can go for the sweep. And that's got to be scary for the Cubs, you know, facing a perennial Cy Young candidate, facing him in a game that, quite frankly, they kind of need to win. Otherwise, they'll drop 5 straight. Well, they don't need to win it, but that'll be 5 straight. But that's kind of the way the Cubs have been going. And then, you know, they have 2 10-win teams, or 10-win streaks already in this season. But, you know, let me get back to what I was talking about with Walt Weiss. There was a game where Grant Holmes started, and that was the first game of this Cubs series. And he let Grant Holmes go 4 innings and essentially got through 2 times through the order. Had a little bit of trouble, gave up a 2-run home run, but only gave up 1 hit. And then he put Didier Fuentes in, and Didier Fuentes went, I think, 2 innings of spectacular. I think possibly 3 innings of spectacular pitching. And then the Braves came back and ended up winning 5-2, where the Cubs only got 1 hit in that game. So you had Grant for 5, Holmes for 3, and then Iglesias shutting it out. I can't remember who went the 8th inning. I did not watch that game. I was keeping up with it because I had my own softball game, slow pitch that time. So what that shows me is that Walt Weiss is recognizing that a guy in Grant Holmes is not pitching the way that he was when he was really on his game. And he's maybe working through some things, and maybe he needs to get some things straight. So he's not going to push him And he's putting this young pitcher in a position that is a little bit easier for him as well. So he is putting his pitchers, especially his young pitchers and, pitchers that are not the top of the rotation guys, in positions to where they can, succeed and are more advantageous for them to succeed. And then the way that he is making these lineup constructions, it seems like he's always having the right hitter in the right spot. So when this era of Walt Weiss started, no one knew what to expect. People can say I didn't like the hire, but how can you not like the hire when he hasn't done anything? But those people that might have said that in the first place, they ain't saying that shit now. But we'll see what happens. By the time I'll be driving back after this game, we'll see where the Braves game is at. But until then, don't slip.